Hey y'all, the title of this live stream video is Automating Customer Research. The first thing I'm actually going to tell you before I get into how to automate some of your customer research is that you can't. So if you are thinking about like, oh, how can I automate that whole thing and sort of get, the entire set of everything customers are thinking automatically, you can't. There's so many ways that customers surface what they care about. And some of them happen in digital channels, but some of them happen in person. Some of them happen in all kinds of other places. So that's one. And it's kind of a weird way for me to start this video, right? Just say, you can't do the whole thing. But things like talking to your customers in person, talking to them on the phone, having them ask questions on webinars, all those things are extremely important and not that easy to scale. And I'm going to show you a framework for pulling in learnings from that into a broader strategy. But what I'm going to talk about today is a way of automating some of your customer research on digital channels and for what they're actually looking for and thinking about on digital channels and specifically on web properties. But you could apply this method to almost anything, including, by the way, some of those live chats and other things. I'll get to that in a minute. And the thing I'm going to talk about specifically is finding their frequently asked questions and how to do that at scale and then do stuff with it, do the stuff with that information. And what I want to come back to in all of these videos before I start getting into like the specifics of how you do the thing and why you would do it and how it works, all that stuff, is what we're trying to accomplish here is as content systems people. And if you're a CMO or a VP of marketing watching this, or a writer, anybody who's working in marketing thinking about this, we're all needing to think today in terms of content systems. And that means, how do we most efficiently take all the things that we know about our product and about how to solve a problem and about the problem itself and about how to grow your business, about how to do all those things, all the things that we know, all the things that our solutions architects know and that our customer service people know and that our marketers know and that our sales people, all those things, our product people, all those things that we know. And how do we convert them as efficiently and effectively and widely distributed as we can into things that our buyers need to know? And in doing that, we do our buyers a tremendous service. We do a lot of people a tremendous service who might not even buy from us. And we also show what our value is as a product and how we can help. And we find the people who need that help and we get them into the funnel, and then we can talk to them about we earn the right to talk to them about the problems that our product actually solves. And I stole part of that definition from Lee Densmer, who writes a lot about this stuff and has a great post about what content marketing really is. But I want to step back and give you this content systems idea before I get into the specifics of answering customer questions and where that fits into this. Okay. So then the next thing I want to say is, if you agree that a content system is all about taking all that stuff and moving it from your business brain into readable, consumable assets and understanding what works and what doesn't, if you believe that, then the literal questions that your customers have, not just the topics they're interested in, but the actual questions they have, are going to be an important part of that equation. So what I want to talk about today is, how can we surface those specific questions in an automated way? And I'm going to show you a couple of interesting posts, and then I'm going to show you the way that we do it. And I'm going to give you a link to a toy version of what I'm going to talk about today. There are a bunch of things that, have made me think that this is a useful thing to talk about. So I'm going to share a couple of posts real quick. One of them I'm going to share is just this. This is stuff that's like really fresh, which is great. Here's my LinkedIn. Hopefully you can see this. You can't see it because I didn't share my screen. Add to stage. There we go. And this is Kyle Poyar. That one is not, but Kyle Poyar, who's talking about AEO and just like some of the things that you can do there. And actually, it's kind of interesting. Like, if you look at his biggest bets list, one of his biggest bets that he identifies that a lot of marketing teams are thinking about is AI discovery, which is important. And you can marry that with intent to get intent. Anyway, So that's an important post. And it shows the importance of AI discovery as a channel. And then that led me to this post by Josh Grant, who is the VP of Growth at Webflow. And he's seen a lot of fluff. Here's something that worked. We added a sick FAQ plus schema markup automation to 6 of our core feature pages, et cetera, et cetera. Just talking about something that actually worked. And FAQs are these questions we're talking about. As part of the content system, they are the literal questions that your buyer is asking. And so answering them is helpful for AI discovery. It's helpful for all kinds of things. And that is kind of what we're seeing in these 2 posts. Okay, so I started talking about content systems. I talked about customer research and the role of that there. And then some of these specific like things people are pointing out and experiments that are working and channels that people are thinking about. So now let's get into how this actually works. And this is where automation really comes in. So I'm going to show you 2 things. First, I'm going to show you an example spreadsheet. And this is how we've started pulling this data. This is how we've started pulling FAQs is we have a workflow that runs that for all of the topics that people care about, we're looking on LinkedIn, we're looking on Stack Overflow, we're looking on Google, we're looking in all these places, and we have a scraper that runs and grabs the stuff, pulls the questions. This scraper is built in N8N. I'll show you how it works in a second real quick. But that's what we're fundamentally doing is literally going to these sites and finding the questions people are asking. So for some of these topics, you will see some interesting. Now, there are some that are not interesting because it's still LLMs, but like content systems. How can we align content strategy with business objectives? It's a good question. What trends are impacting content? It's pretty generic, but good. What are the other things in here? What are also interesting? Content AI. How does content AI work? That's probably a specific product, so we could throw that one out. But what strategies can be employed to ensure that AI generated content maintains a personal touch and high quality? And then in our way of doing this, we have our questions here, we have our source here, and you can see we've got, Stack Overflow or LinkedIn or Google or Reddit or wherever it's from. But this is the fundamental exercise, is gathering all of these questions. And one of the things that you'll note that this depends on is a topic strategy. We don't want to put every single topic that we could possibly care about in here. We want to focus on the top 10 or so topics that we think we're well addressed to address. So for us, I've got some example topics here, but that might be content strategy, it might be AI and content, it might be SEO, it might be GEO. Those are things that could all be on our topic strategy. For you, there are 5 or 10 other topics, but you want to keep that list pretty manageable so that you can put it in here and see what the FAQs are. And then you can start to refine them and go through them and look for the sources, look for the threads and all those other things. So this is where the thing happens. And you can see we've got the topic, we've got the question, we've got the source. And then what we're doing is we're actually drafting an LLM response. We're actually taking that question that somebody asked and asking that to a separate LLM and seeing what it comes back with, and are we mentioned, who's mentioned, all that stuff. And then the next step with these is then to start taking these, and let me show you how the workflow works just real quick. It's not simple. There are tools that can help automate this. There's AirOps. We use N8N. But you can see what's going on here, which is when you start the workflow, it kind of goes in, it reads these Google Sheets, and here it is looking at all these different sources to find these questions. So these are real questions. And then it's going through a separate thing and answering them, which is happening down here. And I'm actually running this right now while we're talking, and that spreadsheet's being filled up, as we talk. But anyways, so that's the idea here, is we're pulling those FAQs from actual sources and we're putting them into the spreadsheet. Now, what do we do next with all this? So this is where content velocity actually leads back into what we're talking about. And content velocity is, can you publish on a good cadence? It's not like, are you keeping your blog up to date? It's, are you keeping up with all the questions that your buyers have and all the things that they need to know? And are you answering them as many as possible? That is not an English sentence. Are you answering as many of them as possible? So that's where content velocity comes in, because the next thing you can do once you have this data is you can start to say, okay, let's take this question, let's put it in a separate workflow that answers the question using materials from our site or using materials from somewhere else, or pulling, building articles that are full articles, or building Reddit responses. But once you have this data, those are all workflows that you can put on the top. Like I said, there are lots of tools you can do this. We build our own for now, but you can go out and get platforms that will do this for you, of which AirOps is probably the best known right now. So that's it. That's that research workflow. And so when we get back to the original sort of title here, which is automating customer research with LLMs, I started and I said, no, you can't do that. But actually, this is the big part that you can do. What about some of those other things, like the conversations that your sales team is having, or the conversation you're having at events, or the stuff that gets put in the chat at a webinar, or the support tickets that get opened? Well, all that workflow does that I showed you is it goes out to a bunch of websites, but there's no reason you can't extend that workflow, as we have, to do things like look through your call transcripts for this information, or sorry, for questions on these topics. Look through the things that are questions that are being asked at your webinar and add those to this. Anything that has any kind of API connection or where you can hack one together is a candidate for building what we call a question bank, which is ultimately where we're going to. Just what are all the questions and how often are we mentioned in the answers, and what information we need to give, and how can we automate that? And then the other thing you can do is, once you have the questions and the answers, you can talk about distribution. Well, we want to distribute this on our blog. That's relatively easy. Well, this came from Reddit, so maybe we should find that thread, or maybe we should post a new thread. It came from LinkedIn, so maybe we should do a social post about that. Those are all things that you can create some drafts of, especially if you're careful to make them non-promotional and genuinely valuable. Those are all things that you can create drafts of using a workflow like this. So stepping back one more time and thinking about content systems and automating customer research with LLMs, automating your customer research is an important part of a content system. And a content system is a way of creating high performance, high velocity content that gets from what your buyers need to know to the things that you know. So that's what a content system is, and that's where the automation comes in. And this is a really important part of that workflow. And that's why this is interesting. It's not primarily because we're using LLMs, actually. It's not primarily because we're using a certain system. It's not even primarily because of the channels it covers or anything like that, but it's about adding this capability to your system and then using it to answer those questions and make those answers public so that your buyers can learn what they need to know and do all of that more efficiently. And AI obviously opens up huge new opportunities on this front. So that's it for today. I'm going to post a link to the toy version of this workflow. The toy version of this workflow is nice. It see if I can find it for you so you can see what it looks like. It doesn't do all of these things, but it does give you a little form that you can fill out. And you can go in here, and I'll share my screen one more time. Whoops. I didn't share my screen one more time. I can't even find my StreamYard window. There we go. Let's add it to stage, and we'll share this tab instead. And this runs that. And if you run, it takes about a minute to run, but it'll give you a little list of, hey, here are some questions we found. You can do this yourself too. It's not primarily about the tooling. It's about thinking about these things in terms of systems. So yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching now or later. Thanks for your comments and questions. And I will see you next time.